Hi, people. So I'm on a bit of a roll this evening, but I may as well be productive. It's late anyway, so I'm not doing anything else. Um, this is a subject I feel very strongly about. In fact, it's one of the subjects I feel most strongly about, particularly in terms of domestic issues. Although, of course, it happens around the world, but you can't change the whole world. I do think there's a lot of things we could change in this country, though. I'm just going to read out the report. I'm going to get straight into it. Now, this particular crime happened close to where I live, relatively close to where I live, so that's what drew my attention to it. I can't remember if I made a video on this particular report, but it's an update anyway. And this is it. The report's by, I think that's pronounced Jimmy Subuga. Gang told dad of two he looked like Anton Deck before kicking him to death, court told. Group of seven teenagers murdered a loving and compassionate father of two after joking with him that he looked like one of the TV stars Anton Deck, a jury has heard. Danny Humble, 35, was subjected to a short and sustained attack around midnight on Friday, the 28th of May last year, after a night out with his partner in Cramlington, Northumberland, jurors were told. The teenagers, then aged 16 to 18, surrounded him near an underpass, repeatedly kicked him on the floor, and left him with a catastrophic head injury from which he could not recover, Castle Crown Court heard. He was rushed to hospital, but despite the medic's best efforts, the devoted father died from his injuries the following day. Five defendants, Alistair Dixon, Bailey Wilson, Ethan Scott, and Isaac Little, all from Blythe, and Kieros Robinson from Seaton de Level, are now all aged 18. Two other defendants who are 17 cannot be named because of their ages, which I think is a travesty. They all deny murder. Mr. Humble and his partner Adele Stubbs had enjoyed a meal and drinks out after lockdown restrictions were eased, and she later recalled they had drunk a canny skimful, which is a local colloquialism. I guess that means a fair bit. Canny means a lot in Northeast vernacular. Teenagers had also been out drinking in local pubs. Jacob Hallam QC prosecuting said a witness, not one of the defendants, was to tell police how he heard some of the group and Mr. Humble just having a bit of crack on. The witness recalled they told Mr. Humble that he looked like one of television's Anton Deck, and how the 35-year-old replied with words to the effect, "Aye, good one, lads." The witness added that one of the group said, "Can I have your autograph? You're my inspiration." Another defendant said, "Yeah, you do look like him." Soon after, Miss Stubbs recalled her partner said something like, "What did you say?" and people moved towards him. He was hit by an uppercut. When she got to him, he was unconscious and bleeding on the ground, Mr. Hallam said. Jurors were told the fatal attack took 15 seconds. The witness later told police they didn't miss a part of his body. They were all moving around his body, kicking him in. Mr. Hallam said Mr. Humble may have hit one of the 17-year-old defendants in the head before the youth surrounded him. "I sincerely hope he did." Miss Stubbs tried to perform first aid and dialed 999, trying desperately but fruitlessly to save her partner, the court heard. Some of the defendants stayed around in the aftermath of the attack, jurors heard. One of the 17-year-olds appeared to have been crying. A witness was to tell police. Boo-hoo. Mr. Hallam said all of them eventually ran away. The trial continues. I'm not sure if I even want to see the update on what the verdicts are, because I just know from the track record in this country that they'll get a tap on the wrist, proportionally speaking to the gravity of the crime. I suspect what will happen is they'll get about 5 years each, maybe 7 years, which is a travesty. Now, I don't know that, obviously, it hasn't happened yet, but um, I believe this country is very, very soft on youth offenders. Some might disagree, but um, this particular sort of crime really, really bothers me, and it scares me if I'm being honest. I'm 36. I'm just a year older than this guy. I could very well see myself in that situation, walking home from the cinema, minding my own business. Um, this actually ties into that previous video I made about masculinity versus machismo. Um, Young men in this country, and it is predominantly young men, sometimes you get girl gangs, but they are not as common. I'm not saying they're unheard of, but more often than not, it is young men. They need to get it into their heads that cowardly behavior, strength in numbers, it doesn't make you a man. Um, and I'm not proposing Killer Rich. I'm not proposing there's any magic wand to this. I'm not proposing the answers could be found overnight. Now, let me not equivocate on this. I think these feral thugs, if found guilty, obviously the evidence needs to be presented. They have to have defence. Let there be due process. But if found guilty, I think they should get an absolute minimum of 15 years. I think that would be about right. Minimum. Minimum. I'm just being realistic. I think it should be more, but realistically, 15 years. They won't get that because of our soft justice system. Um, but, to think of it's just so depraved. Like rounding in on someone like a pack of animals. And we often, the thing is, a pack of animals do it for survival. The feral teenagers. And the thing is, there's been so many cases in this country of young fathers um, being killed by feral teenagers. It seems to be that particular dynamic. Not young mothers. Um, and I think there's partly a factor there that, maybe he was with his partner, maybe he was being defensive of her. But someone said it sounded like banter. Well, I imagine what probably happened was he kind of wanted to shake it off at first, then they were being smart arses, and maybe he lost his temper. I sincerely hope he did get hit in, and I really hope he seriously hurt one of them before they took his life. There was pictures of them leaving the court, like the worthless cards that they are covering their faces. I would say that someone who's innocent wouldn't be covering their face like that. Um, I don't even want to know the outcome because I just um, I just know the track record in this country is to be soft with youth killers. But I take the view that if you're going to beat a stranger to death, you're a dangerous individual. Um, I mean, there's certain murders, you get like the French would call a crime of passion. Say, for example, one guy kills another guy because he's been sleeping with his wife. Now, it's still murder, it's still wrong, but that's got a certain context. With a crime like this, it's just so depraved and so it's scary because it doesn't matter how tough you are, um, no one can take on a gang. I really think that we need to. I think judges should be a lot more direct with them. They say things, they just state the obvious. They don't. I honestly, if I was a judge, I would say to their face, "You think you're a man? You're nothing but a scared little boy. You're a card, and I'm going to put you away for a very long time. That'll give you something to be scared about." Now, some people might shun at that, say it's not professional, but the thing is, this toxic culture that young men get themselves into. And I'm not generalizing. I'm not saying all teenage boys are like this. Not for a second. Hell, I was a teenage boy once. So I'm not generalizing. And indeed, don't forget that often victims of youth gangs are other young people. It's another misconception, incidentally, this idea that young people are against justice for young offenders. You know, I was 16 when I was assaulted by gangs, so I imagine some of the people who are most hardline in terms of justice are other teenagers because they don't want to be victimized. But I think there should be a deterrent. The thing is, though, I'm realistic. I know that people like this they don't follow legal cases. They don't look at another case and say, "Oh, well, that guy got 15 years for beating a young father to death, so I better not do it." They're detached from that. So I think we need to go straight to the culture. this toxic machismo culture, um, and absolutely show it for what it is, ridicule it, mock it, um, weaken it, crush it. Um, because until we do, this sort of thing's going to happen again. Now, another bit of context here is that the south of Northumberland, towns like Cramlington and Blythe are pretty deprived. They're known for high unemployment, drug problems, and so on. And of course, that's going to play a factor. But you know, there's also been cases of this happening in leafy suburbs. I think it's not so much the background, it's because, there's always been poverty in this country. There's always been pockets of poverty. But I'm not sure that we've always had this situation. I think this is a relatively recent phenomenon. That's not to say, if you looked at London's East End in the 1880s, 1870s, it was a violent place. You would have had things like this happening. But I think that there's less of a fear of justice now. I think that's a difference. And when I read about this stuff, I get so depressed because, as a teenager, along with my family, we were forced from a home by youth gangs, and that was 20 years ago, and it's never left me. Um, it's one reason I have such strong views on crime. It's also why I'm convinced that our out of touch legal establishment needs to change. I think the sentencing committee should be elected, because they're the people with the power to influence the guidelines on sentencing. Judges claim that their hands are tied. I think sometimes judges are ideologically soft. And getting back to, I mentioned in the last video about transparency of justice, um, I would like to see, maybe in the UK context, a prosecution lawyer, really cross examining teenagers like this, see justice being done. I think a big problem in our system is for most people, unless they're directly involved in the court system, i.e., as a victim, as part of the jury, or as a defendant, for most people, it's distant. I think that's a serious problem because it utterly destroys. Let's say I'm totally misguided and the system's not as soft as I think it is. The point is, it's still distant, and there's still an optics issue there. I don't think I'm wrong. I do think it's too soft, but um, regardless, the system is distant, unquestionably. Now, the Sentencing Council of England and Wales have public consultations to an extent, but it's not on every crime. It's certainly not on youth crime. Um, and they're unelected, so they don't have to answer to the public. I don't have much respect for them as an organisation because I think they are a big part of the reason why we continue to see leniency. Um, and it just depresses and angers me so much, and it scares me because um, like I say, no one can. Of course, they say that for Mr. Humble, he's gone, he's passed away. The real suffering will be his family and his partner, and my heart just goes out to them because the mental anguish and the pain that they'll be going through and waiting for this verdict. I believe in due process. Obviously, that the evidence be presented. There were witnesses, but I really, really think we have to destroy, smash gang culture, by which I mean this mentality of behaving like a pack. And I firmly believe that that should be a new offence. This will probably be designated as manslaughter or assault, but I think there should be a specific offence of a gang attacking an individual because it happens a lot in this country, at least too much. And I think it should be a specific offence. And I think it should be one of the most serious offences around because it's utterly depraved. I honestly think it's one of the worst crimes. Um, it's just pure evil. Um, by the way, I'm not suggesting this was a factor in this case, but those who just want to legalize all drugs, um, to me, that's playing with fire. I mean, I know, I'm not saying it was the factor in this case. I know that Cramlington and Blythe have serious drug problems. Now, you cannot tell me there's no correlation. I just, I think that would be ridiculous. Anyway, I'll wrap this up because I'll just repeat myself, but something has to change. Firstly, there needs to be much, much more severe penalties as a deterrent, or even if not a deterrent, just for basic justice. Much, much more severe penalties for this sort of crime. Much more severe. Anything less than 10 years is a travesty. There could be some mitigation. Let's say, for example, one of them expresses deep remorse and another one doesn't, then there'd be a slight difference in their sentences. But they were all involved. They behaved like a pack. They should also face severe consequences. Severe. Because they need to know that they're paying for what they've done, for taking a young man's life. It's and it actually scares me to think of what his loved ones are going through. I can imagine what I'd go through. And I mean, no amount of counseling would get over, you know, I think I don't think you could ever get over something like that. So, yeah, definitely much harsher sentences because it has to reflect the gravity of the crime. That's justice. And yeah, we need to smash gang culture. It needs to, it needs to really be brought into schools, and I don't think it is. And I think, anything that is connected to gang culture needs to be shunned. I totally support censoring drill music because I think it fuels this sort of stuff. Maybe not in this case again, but certainly in London and Birmingham. Anyway, I'll wrap this up. It's bloody depressing, but it's we can't turn away from it. It's in our society, and I just hope that his family get justice, by which it should be years behind bars for the perpetrators. They could blubber away in self pity as much as they want. They done this. They callously murdered a stranger, so they have to pay for what they done.